Welcome back, everybody, to the Philadelphia Eagles franchise here on Madden 22. Today we have the 2024 NFL Draft Preview. It is officially draft time here in the offseason, and I'm not talking about the World War III draft. So in today's video, we are going to reevaluate a lot of the prospects here in this draft class. We're going to take a look at whose stocks have gone up and who have gone down throughout the season. We are going to look at Madden's mock drafts, which are usually pretty bad. So I ended up making my own mock draft for the first round, and then I did a full mock draft for our Eagles individually. But before that, I do want to briefly show you guys what happened in the previous episode in case you missed it or forgot, because there was a lot of moves. Plenty of hires in the coaching carousel, most notably our offensive coordinator, Sean McVay, being the new head coach of the Giants, amongst other additions. We re-signed a number of players, including Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, along with Josh Uche to a pretty substantial 4-year contract. But we let a lot of guys go, like Chase Claypool, Dallas Goedert, Josh Sweat, Akeem Davis-Gaither, Terrell Burgess, and most notably, quarterback Jalen Hurts. The Jalen Hurts era in Philadelphia is no more. He signed a 3-year deal with the Carolina Panthers, so he will now be their starter going forward, and quarterback is a big need for us. We did have a huge free agency, though. We gave a triple figures contract to Jedrick Wills. We signed Isaiah Simmons for big money. Those were our two main signings. We also brought back Bobby Wagner, and we signed some solid depth pieces. We let a lot of guys go, but I think we added some really good players who can be foundational additions to our roster. And we do still have a couple holes to address as we go into the draft. But I think we have the draft capital to really round out our team pretty well. There were a number of big trades in the last episode as well. Derek Carr to the Vikings, Foye Oluokun to the Texans, Ed Oliver to Detroit, Marcus May to the Titans. And then the biggest trades involved the Rams, trading away Jalen Ramsey to Baltimore and Aaron Donald to Chicago. The Rams finished with the worst record in the league this year. They've been bad for a while. They needed to restart. They added some pretty high draft picks. So Los Angeles, along with the number 1 pick now, has 2 additional first rounders. As we take a look at our roster here going into the draft, the 2 biggest holes are probably quarterback and tight end. Obviously, QB, we know we need a true starter. Maddox Gillard is the only one on our roster, and spoiler alert, if he's our week 1 starter, it's going to be a bad season for us. So as we go through the draft class, as I said, a number of players have gone up, have gone down. We're going to go briefly position by position just to remind you guys what the draft board looks like. And of course, we are going to start with maybe the most important position, quarterback. And this is especially prevalent for us because we probably will need to draft one high this year. Westlake's Greg Waters-Key entered the season as the projected number 1 pick, and it stayed that way. Waters-Key had a fantastic senior season, breaking the NCAA record for passing touchdowns in a season, and he is going to be a superstar here in the NFL. As I said earlier, the Los Angeles Rams are picking number 1 overall, and they have a great opportunity to get a new face of their franchise, their first-round pick since 8 years ago when they selected Jared Goff, number 1 overall, and obviously that pick didn't really work out. Waters-Key is a fantastic talent, great athleticism, unbelievable arm strength, unbelievable accuracy. He's the perfect package at quarterback. However, some scouts do not believe it's a sure thing he goes number 1. Some people in the Rams organization reportedly are very high on Coastal Carolina quarterback Nico Cabanera. Cabanera captivated the minds of many this season, having a Johnny Manziel type of impact on the shot-to-clear offense. Cabanera doesn't have the greatest arm, and most of his best passes were in the 10 to 20 yard range, but as a playmaker, as a runner, he was special and super fun to watch. The question is, though, can he translate his skill set into the NFL? We've seen guys like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, amongst others, as high-level athletes become great NFL quarterbacks, but some scouts don't know if Cabanera has the arm talent that either of those two, which is the big question with him. But if the Rams really like him, they may not be afraid to pick him number 1 over Greg Waters-Key. From there, we get to the next tier of quarterbacks. I think it's a lot more likely these guys could go in the Eagles' range, whether Philadelphia trades up or one of them falls. Loco Onwosu out of Michigan might be the highest ceiling quarterback of the next 3 we're going to go over. Loco Onwosu, of course, is a lefty, which certainly makes things a little bit interesting and unique. Loco Onwosu is the number 1 prospect in his recruiting class, came in as arguably one of the top high school quarterbacks really in the recent 10 to 15 years, and he didn't really live up to his expectations at Michigan, but he was still a good enough player to likely warrant being a top 15 selection, largely based off his athletic traits and upside, but he did show the flashes at Michigan of potentially being really good. He's not going to fall to the Eagles' first rounder, 26th overall, so he will likely be a trade-up candidate. The FCS will produce a first-round quarterback this year in Bjorn Syverson, whose stock has gone up throughout the season. Syverson is a 6'7", big-armed quarterback. He doesn't really have the ideal mobility you hope for out of the pocket, but this kid has an absolute rocket. We have seen the FCS really not produce many top draft picks at quarterback other than Carson Wentz and Trey Lance, both of whom went to North Dakota State. Bjorn Syverson probably will not fall to the Eagles' first-round pick, although it is sort of possible. So again, he's probably more of a trade-up candidate. Again, he doesn't possess elite athleticism, but it's not terrible either. But obviously, the arm strength is what you really like about him. He's got probably the strongest arm in the draft class. Callum Jupiter might be the most realistic option for Philadelphia. I would say there's a 50-50 shot he drops to their first-round pick. And even if he doesn't, the Eagles could easily move up a few spots in order to get him if he's the best quarterback left. I don't think Jupiter has the ceiling that Loco Onwosu or Bjorn Syverson do, but I think he's got a better chance to make an impact day one. Callum Jupiter had a phenomenal season this year for Illinois, replacing Ricky Radzavinski, who was a second-round pick last year, and he was arguably better than Ricky Radzavinski, who's likely going to start for the Titans this season. Callum Jupiter is a very well-rounded guy, jack of all trades, master of none type of player. He's a really good athlete. He has pretty solid arm strength, and his accuracy is quite fine. I don't think he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but I think he's someone who's going to be able to make an early contribution, which is what the Eagles need. From there, we get to the day two guys. J.J. Fontaine and Duke McCurdy are both probably going to be second or third round picks. Melvin Pope is another player to watch out for, along with Clayton Ellis out of Northwestern. His stock dropped quite a bit this year. Could have been a first-rounder going into the season. Jamani and Jason out of Texas Tech as well is another guy with a high ceiling. And then look out down the board for Georgia Tech's Donovan Krause. Krause doesn't really have NFL arm strength, but he's super explosive. Pretty much a poor man's version of Nico Cabanera. We don't need a running back, obviously. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. But USC's Charlie Park, who was a projected third to fourth rounder, had a phenomenal season this year for the Trojans and is now projected to go in the top 20, likely as RB1 in this class. Chevelle Armanadou, who was originally the projected top running back, will likely be the second or third one off the board. He's pretty much side and side with John Tate Whitaker out of Arkansas. Adam Rutledge out of Westlake is another player to look out for as well. It's a pretty talented running back class, but again, I don't think we're going to pick one because we've already got two really good ones. It's a pretty great wide receiver group, including the top. Going into the season, Alabama's Money Motique was the number one receiver in the class and arguably the best non-quarterback in this class who plays offense. I think that statement probably still stands. He had a great season this year for the Crimson Tide. Some coaches view him as a little bit of a diva, questionable character stuff, but the talent is there, to put it lightly. He's probably going to go in the top 10 and is somebody who I think can be an alpha receiver right away. 6'5", 225 is your prototypical big receiver with great athleticism. I think he has shades of Mike Evans in his game, a little bit of DK Metcalf. Maybe not the most polished route runner, but somebody who can go up and get it, and he can make plays with the ball in his hands as well. From there, I think Dominic Porter has solidly established himself as wide receiver 2 in this draft class. I'm not convinced he's going to go in the top 10, but I could see him go around that 10 range. I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Eagles offense as someone who can play on the outside and in the slot. The Eagles really need somebody who can play the slot. But Dominic Porter is going to be long gone by the time we get to the 26th pick. Porter was Greg Waters' key number one target this season, and he had a great year for the Westlake Hornets. Another guy who I think has a very high floor, doesn't excel in one particular area, but really lacks weaknesses. Good athlete, very strong route runner, pretty reliable hands. There aren't a whole lot of question marks with Dominic Porter's game, and I think he's someone who easily could be an 1,000-yard receiver right away. One of the biggest risers in this class is Virginia's Tyrell Tutt, projected as a day 2 guy. Now he's probably going to go in the top 15. And then there are some other day 2 guys I really like. Trey Judah out of Notre Dame especially. If the Eagles want Judah, they're probably going to have to use their first-round pick on him. I don't know how the Eagles feel about using a first-rounder on a wide receiver. Although they already have Devontae Smith and Tykeem Keon, they do need a third one pretty badly. Judah's not the biggest guy, stands at around 5'10", but this kid is a big play waiting to happen. He scored 17 touchdowns this season for the Fighting Irish, amongst the top in the NCAA. He has great speed, great athleticism, and is a machine with the ball in his hands. He needs to focus on his catching. He drops a few too many easy passes, but other than that, he could be very good. Jayshon Brown from Illinois, his stock kind of dipped this season. As we go down to the second and third round guys, there are a few more players I like here who the Eagles could look at in round 2, including Jalen Argosier out of Mississippi State. Argosier, at the beginning of the season, was kind of an unheard of player, but then as the year quickly went along, it looked like he was going to go in the first round, but then he quickly came back down to earth in the second half of the season, and it looks like he's probably going to go in day 2. This is somebody who is super explosive again. We haven't really seen him play at a high level in a high sample size. Before this season, he was pretty much a depth guy for Mississippi State, dominated early in the season, but the past 6 or 7 games, he played like a pretty average wide receiver, so there are some questions about him, but he had a phenomenal combine, and the athleticism with him is certainly there. Probably someone who the Eagles will eye up in the second round if they do look to go the receiver route in that range. Another guy I think the Eagles could look at in round 2 is J.T. DeMarco out of Ohio State. Although DeMarco mainly played on the outside in college, he's like the perfect slot receiver in my type of offense. Throughout pretty much all of my Madden series I've done, I've had very similar type of receivers in the slot. Smaller guys who can burn. J.T. DeMarco has some absolute wheels and is a threat with the ball in his hands. We've seen guys like Rashad Pickney, Casey Shock, and Lawrence Parnell in other series throughout my channel have a similar role and thrive. I don't think DeMarco is quite as fast as them, but I think he would really produce similarly. I think DeMarco is more quick than fast. He knows how to make sharp angles very quickly. Doesn't have as long of speed as someone like Casey Shock or Rashad Pickney, but another player whom I really, really like. It's a deep receiver class as well. Quite a few guys in day 3 who are pretty talented as we go to tight end. One of the biggest needs on this roster with Dallas Goedert gone and no Dallas Goedert replacement. Corvus-Psyche Ricks out of Northern Illinois is arguably the best tight end prospect we've seen in this series thus far and is definitely a candidate for the 26th overall pick if he were to fall. Ricks doesn't have the freakish athleticism that we've seen from other top tight end prospects over recent seasons. However, he's somebody who can be reliable and somebody who can be a safety blanket. With Devontae Smith and Tykeem Keon already in the offense, along with Rosemont St. Clair, it's not like the Eagles need a big play threat at tight end. Ricks is not a big play threat. He's somebody who's a good route runner, good hands, good blocker. That's the type of tight end this team needs, and I think he'd be a perfect fit. Unfortunately, it's not overly deep of a tight end class, so if the Eagles don't get Ricks, they might be out of luck. It's a good offensive line group headlined by Texas A&M left tackle Clavon Samba, along with projected first-rounders George Smith and Emmanuel Escaveta at left tackle. I think we're pretty good at tackle with Lane Johnson, Tyler Palumbo, and the recently signed Jedrick Wills, so we probably won't go that route. There are 2 blue-chip level guards in this class, Kingsley Gore out of Iowa, Frederick Bernard Switten out of Missouri. Again, I don't think the Eagles really need a guard, even though Brandon Brooks did recently retire. It's a pretty weak center class, which is fine. We have Jason Kelce, who's very good, and we have Jason Kelce's replacement already in Fletcher Luce. James Harlow from Penn State is another projected first-round guy, and then Matthew Steele out of Washington State at right tackle I also like a lot. I don't think the Eagles are going to invest highly in the offensive line this year in the draft, but there are some good ones. Now we move to the defensive side of the ball. Demetric Gardner from Illinois has asserted himself into top 5 consideration. We probably won't land him, so we won't really talk about him. A player I highlighted in the prospect profile we did for defensive ends earlier in the season is Michigan's Coleman Rasmussen, who is one of the most polarizing players in the draft class. Rasmussen arguably is first-round talent, somebody who could be a day-1 starter and produce at a very high level. However, there are some character concerns about him. Many of his past coaches have described him as a diva and a prima donna. He has played for 3 different schools in his 4-year collegiate career, and although he has dominated at all 3 landing spots, he was kicked out of 2 schools for a reason. He tested, unsurprisingly, very well at the Combine, finishing amongst the top defensive ends in pretty much every drill. And again, this kid is a first-round talent, but I don't know which team is going to want a questionable character like him entering their locker room. So I'm very curious to see where he ends up. Hopefully it's an organization who is able to discipline their players and an organization with a lot of class. Now as we move to right end, Cornerback McAllister was at one point this season projected to be the top non-quarterback off the board. That is no longer the case. McAllister is no longer the top prospect that people are making him out to be, and while he's still projected to go in the top 10 to 15 picks, when we talked about him halfway through the season, I thought he was going to be the first non-quarterback taken. He has certainly taken a dip. He had a pretty poor end of the season here for Memphis. He also had questionable medical results at his Combine, although athletically he did test very well at the Combine, most notably a 4.47 40-yard dash, and at his Memphis Pro Day, 4.46, along with 35 reps on the bench. The athleticism with this kid is unbelievable, but there are some noticeable medical question marks that are scaring some teams off. It only takes one to want to take the big swing and pick him, which is why I think he'll go sooner than later. But there are some major question marks with Cornerback McAllister, and I'm not so sure he's going to be a top 10 pick. If he does fall farther than expected, maybe the Eagles are going to take a look at him, because the talent with him is just immeasurable. And you could argue he might be the best non-quarterback in this draft class, which just is crazy to think about, that he could slip out of the top 10 to 15. Abraham Ulysses Sr. and Ezemi Ikujigba are both projected first-rounders as well, so we'll keep an eye on them. As we go to defensive tackle, there are quite a few players I like here. Defensive tackle is a pretty big need for the Eagles, and I think a player to watch out for with the 26th pick is Niles Onwualu out of the University of Michigan. A lot of the attention this season on the Michigan defensive line has gone to Coleman Rasmussen, who we talked about earlier. Rasmussen was arguably the better player, but Onwualu has been a consistent starter for this team for 4 years, and he does not have the same character concerns that Coleman Rasmussen does. Onwualu doesn't put up a ton of big numbers, has not had a season with over 6 sacks in his Michigan career, but he's somebody who can stuff the run, who can get after the quarterback, and he had to face a lot of double teams this season, which let guys like Coleman Rasmussen get one-on-one opportunities. Onwualu tested very well at the Combine, nearly benching 40 reps on the bench. This kid is a stud, and if the Eagles can take him at 26, I think that'd be a great pick. As we scroll down the board, it's a very deep defensive tackle class, and with Fletcher Cox aging, there's definitely somebody needed in the middle of that defensive line, so don't be surprised if the Fletcher Cox replacement is selected in this draft. At left outside linebacker, we have a couple talented edge rushers in Maclasia Burgundy, who's probably going to go in the top 10. David Agdebango out of Baylor as well is very talented, but I don't think either of those guys are really in the Eagles' range, and I don't think they're great scheme fits either. So we're going to go right to Hannibal Savage, projected in the 3rd to 4th round out of New Mexico. I like linebackers who can do a little bit of everything, make plays in coverage, make splashy moves in the run game, and get after the quarterback. That's why I was so high on Winston Johnson a couple years ago, and obviously that pick has been a very good one so far for Philadelphia. Hannibal Savage is a very similar player. He had a pretty strong Combine, and I think he'd be a great fit for our defense. He's the type of player who I really like, and he's a player who's definitely going to be on our radar. Unfortunately, we do not own a 3rd-round pick at the moment. It went to the Steelers in the Chase Claypool trade, so it might be a little bit hard to land him, but he's a player we really like and we'll definitely keep our eyes on during draft day. At middle linebacker, Jarek Haig from Ole Miss is definitely going to go in the 1st round. Josiah Brown and Nasir Kadir could also be 1st-rounders. I don't think the Eagles want to go with a middle linebacker in round 1, though, especially with the Isaiah Simmons signing. So we're going to go down the board a little bit, look at Liberty's Vartarius Stallion. If the Eagles want him, they're probably going to have to use their 2nd-round selection on him. Rock Hard Stallion, yes, that is his nickname, was one of the most fun players to watch in college this season, somebody whose stock took a major leap throughout the season. He just flies around the field, had a pretty good Combine. He's big, he's physical, he's tough. He can make plays in the run, he can make plays in coverage. And I think he's a high-character guy who could be a leader on a defense and somebody who I would certainly really like on our defense. Then moving to right outside linebacker, Mustafa Yawa from North Carolina has been one of the biggest draft risers this season, and now he is currently projected as the number 2 player in the class, only behind Greg Waters-Key. Yawa is an unbelievable talent. Scouts have compared him to Jabari Achebe, who, of course, the Eagles drafted last year, because both Achebe and Yawa have very similar athletic traits and very similar explosiveness. I don't think that's a fair comparison because Jabari Achebe had one of the greatest seasons for a rookie pass rusher ever with 15.5 sacks. But Mustafa Yawa here is an unbelievable talent. Sub 4.5 40-yard dash, finished in the top 3 in most of the other combine drills as well. This is somebody who's going to be a fantastic pass rusher if developed. The Dolphins had the number 2 overall pick. He's currently the odds-on favorite to go with that selection. Other possible first-rounders at this position include LSU's Bam Jackson and San Diego State's Josh Pham. Now we move to cornerback. The Eagles have 2 of the best starting corners in the NFL with Nehemiah Richardson and C.J. Thomas. However, with Terrell Burgess out the door, the Eagles need a new nickel corner. They won't get their hands on Texas A&M's Gogurt Spiffy, but I do want to talk about him because he is really, really good. It seems like every year in this series, there's an elite blue-chip cornerback prospect who enters the draft. In year 1, it was Nehemiah Richardson, who obviously we drafted. And then last year, it was Jalen Duggs Beckham, who went to the Jets. I think Gogurt Spiffy here is the next in line. He tore up the combine. He tore up his pro day with a 4.29 40-yard dash. Great ball skills. Great in man end zone. He's just a super well-rounded player and is definitely going to go in the top 5. Prudencio Pinheiro and Shock Sanders are a couple of other projected first-rounders, along with Ole Miss's Denzel DeWart, who's been one of the biggest risers throughout the pre-draft process. James Abdullaye and Brendan Boone have also risen up the board dramatically. Jacques Stanley II as well as another projected possible first-rounder. So the cornerback class has really gone up in stock since the offseason. Of course, watch out for Mekhi Diggins out of Metropolis, one of the 5 Metropolis players in this year's draft class. As we now move to safety, Edmund Orient from Ole Miss is one of the more polarizing players in this draft class. He's arguably a top 10 or 15 talent, but there are some major medical concerns with him. He messed up his knee pretty badly early in the season with a torn ACL in Ole Miss's just 3rd game of the season. Some scouts do question whether he will be able to play right away. His medical tests all looked clear at the combine, and he was able to participate in every drill, which is a good sign. But whoever drafts him may need to take some time for him to get back to full speed. Orient had a phenomenal sophomore season, however, which is how he got to be a first-round projection. And somebody's going to take a risk with this kid. Somebody who has a chance to be an elite free safety, but the knee concern is a major issue. I still think he'll be a first-rounder, but he's definitely a gamble. If you'd rather go with a little bit of a safer option, look towards Oka Polamalu out of Louisville, related to the great Troy Polamalu. I don't think Oka Polamalu will be as good as Troy. That doesn't really say a whole lot because Troy Polamalu was a first-ballot Hall of Famer. But Oka Polamalu has the chance to be one of the best defensive backs in this draft class. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the first 3 safety off the board. Even if Edmund Orient is the better player, with his medical issues, somebody may prefer Polamalu. Not a great athlete, but he's a super smart and instinctive player, great ball skills, and somebody who I think is going to be very NFL ready right away. As we scroll down, it's a pretty deep safety class, a number of guys who could be 2nd or 3rd rounders. And then as we go to strong safety, one of my favorite players in the draft class, Notre Dame's Salem Newport. I don't think he falls to the 26th pick, but if he does, it's going to be hard for the Eagles to pass on him, even if safety is not a major need. Newport is a versatile chess piece. You can put him at strong safety, free safety, sub-linebacker, in the nickel, whatever you want to do with him. With the signing of Isaiah Simmons as well, I don't think he would really be in consideration for Philadelphia, but he's pretty much the less athletic version of Isaiah Simmons. And if you can put him in the hands of a right team with a good defensive coordinator who knows how to use him, look out. He could turn into an absolute stud. So there you go. That is our evaluation of this year's draft class. Now let's talk mock drafts. You guys know that I am a huge mock draft nerd. We're going to have 3 that we look through from Madden. And again, Madden is not the smartest, so we'll take this through a grain of salt. But it's still worth taking a look because it is interesting. The first mock draft was made around the Super Bowl, I think right before the offseason started. Unsurprisingly, they had Greg Waters-Key going number 1 overall. Mustafa Yala, Gogurt Spiffy, Demetric Gardner, and McLesia Burgundy rounded out the top 5. The next quarterback off the board is actually Loco Onwosu to the Vikings over Nico Cabanera. Then we have Bjorn Syverson, again over Nico Cabanera. The Falcons would be a surprise team picking a quarterback since they drafted C.C. Vaughn last year. They had the Bengals getting Cabanera, which obviously doesn't make sense because Cincinnati has Joe Burrow. Again, as I said, take these with a grain of salt. And then with the 26th pick, they had the Eagles selecting Quentin Ball, defensive tackle out of Duke, over quarterback Callum Jupiter, who goes with the very next pick to the Las Vegas Raiders, who definitely need a quarterback with, of course, the Derek Carr trade. Then this is where things get weird. Mock draft 4. This is around free agency, and they had the Rams getting Nico Cabanera number 1 overall over Greg Waters-Key, who instead goes second to the Dolphins. That would be a major surprise. But again, apparently there are some Rams scouts who prefer Nico Cabanera over Greg Waters-Key, which is just crazy to me. That means all the other non-elite quarterbacks are going to drop a spot. They still have Loco Onwosu going at 7. They still have Bjorn Syverson going 14. Again, a major surprise there. And then the other quarterback, Callum Jupiter, would end up going 22nd to the Broncos. They have Aaron Rodgers still, but he is 40 years old, so it would make sense if they want to look with a younger guy. And they also had us getting, once again, Quentin Ball out of Duke. And then the final mock draft made right before the draft, again, Nico Cabanera goes number 1. This completely blows my mind. If the Rams actually do this, my head will explode. Most of the top picks end up staying the same. The first change we have would not be for a while until pick 9 with Dominic Porter going to the Green Bay Packers. This time they have Callum Jupiter going 14 to the Falcons over Bjorn Syverson, who they have at pick 18 to the Steelers. Again, it would be a major surprise if Pittsburgh picks a quarterback. They drafted Xander Vanderwall in the first round a couple years ago in the top 10. I'd be surprised if they wanted to move on from him that quickly. With our other first-round pick, instead of Quentin Ball, they have us getting Corvusaki Ricks out of Northern Illinois. I think that'd be a good pick, as we do really need tight end. Let's take a look at the mock draft I made. So this is a full first-round mock draft with the updated trades, because Madden's didn't. So we start at pick 1, Greg Waters-Key. I don't think the Rams are going to try to outsmart everybody and pick Cabanera. I think Greg Waters-Key is really the only route they could go here, and if they don't pick Waters-Key, it'd be a big mistake. From there, we look at all the non-quarterbacks. Mustafa Yawa to the Dolphins, Gogurt Spiffy to the Raiders, and Demetric Gardner to the Colts, all super high-level defenders. The Titans, with a new regime led by head coach Aaron Glenn, select offensive tackle Clavon Samba, the second Texas A&M player in the top 5. Edge rusher McLesia Burgundy to the Lions. Wide receiver Money Motique to the Vikings. I think that'd be a fun fit with Justin Jefferson and the recently signed Jalen Reagor. And then at pick 8, this is where I have Nico Cabanera off the board. In none of the mock drafts did they have the Buccaneers pick a QB. They still have Tom Brady, who is 47 years old at this point. He's a grandpa, and I don't think Brady's going to stick around for a whole lot longer, so the Bucs may want to get somebody who they can develop for a year. I think having Tom Brady as a mentor would certainly be great for Nico Cabanera's development. So I think that pick could make a lot of sense there for Tampa Bay if Cabanera is on the board. In a lot of the mock drafts, they've had the Packers go wide receiver. In the last one, they had them getting Dominic Porter. I think that pick could make sense, but they did just draft Isaiah Thomas III last year, who had an outstanding rookie season, winning wide receiver of the year in the NFC. And although they could pair him with his former college teammate, I instead had them getting guard Kingsley Gore. Dominic Porter won't have to wait too much longer, as I have them going 10 to the Cardinals. I think they need receiver more than Green Bay, and I think that would be a better landing spot for Porter. I have Carlton McAllister at 11 to Seattle. Again, McAllister is the big wild card in this draft. Somebody who could pick him in the top 5. Somebody could get a steal with him in the 20s. I really don't know where he's going to end up with his medical concern, so that'll certainly be an interesting one. Frankie Bernard Swinton, the guard out of Missouri, to Washington. Salem Newport to Buffalo. I don't think he goes that high, but I couldn't really think of anybody else I wanted the Bills to get there. James Harlow to the Falcons. Tyrell Tutt to the Chargers. And then Loco Onwosu to the Jets. I know it's a little bit of a surprise, but Zach Wilson's entering a contract season. He hasn't been all that good so far, so maybe the Jets want to go elsewhere with their new regime. I've got quite a few edge rushers starting to pile off the board here with Abraham Ulysses to the Bengals, David Agdembango to the Steelers, and Ezeme Ekejigba to the Panthers. In one of the mock drafts, I had the Steelers drafting a quarterback. I don't think that's likely. I think Xander Vanderwall is a really talented young player, so I'd be quite surprised by that. If they do go quarterback, maybe he enters the trade market. George Smith, offensive tackle to the Niners. The Lions get linebacker Jarek Haig. And I have the Broncos getting quarterback Bjorn Syverson out of Montana. With Aaron Rodgers being 40 years old, maybe they want to get another piece to help him out. But I think it's going to be hard to pass on Syverson if he falls to 22, which I don't think is overly likely. Emmanuel Escavera to the Rams at 23. In all of the mock drafts, that pick belonged to the Ravens, but that's because it hadn't been updated with the Jalen Ramsey trade. And then at 24, Edmund Orient to the Seahawks. So Seattle's picking, in this mock draft, Carlik McAllister and Edmund Orient, which would be a bold draft because both of them have major medical question marks, but both of them are also superb talents. So if this is what Seattle did, it could be an A-plus draft for them, or it could be a colossal failure. Corvus Guy Ricks goes one pick ahead of Philadelphia to New Orleans, which may be unfortunate, but in this mock draft, I have the Eagles getting Illinois quarterback Callum Jupiter, who I think could step in right away and be the day one starter. The Eagles may need to trade up for him. Again, I think there's a 50-50 shot he falls here, but if he does, it might be hard for Philadelphia to pass on him as their possible franchise quarterback of the future. I had Bam Jackson go to the Raiders, a couple corners off the board with Prudencio Pinheiro to the Chiefs and Shock Sanders to the Rams, Nasir Kadir to the Texans, Niles Onwualu to the Jaguars. He very well could have been the Eagles' pick had we not gone quarterback, and then Josh Pham to the Dallas Cowboys. I think they want to add some more pass rush. They did add Josh Sweat in free agency, stealing him away from us. Now they're adding another edge rusher named Josh here with Josh Pham. Let's take a look at my Eagles mock draft. The Eagles currently have 6 picks, and this is sort of an alternate scenario. If they didn't go quarterback in the first round, I think it could end up like this. With the first round pick, I have us getting Niles Onwualu from Michigan. In this scenario, maybe all 5 quarterbacks were off the board, or maybe we think Onwualu is too good of a player to pass up, even if somebody like Callum Jupiter or maybe even Bjorn Syverson are still on the board. As we go to the second round, there are a number of quarterbacks the Eagles could look at in this range. J.J. Fontaine from South Carolina, Melvin Pope from BYU, Clayton Ellis from Northwestern, and Jamani and Jason from Texas Tech are all options, but I had us getting Duke McCurdy out of Oregon. I think he is the highest ceiling of that group and could be a very interesting player. I don't know how much I would trust him as a day one starter, but interesting idea. Again, we don't have the third rounder, so we hop right into day 3. Wide receiver Wade Garraway out of Washington, who would likely compete for the slot with Troy Dobbs. He's a high-character guy, gritty, good route runner, sneaky athletic. And then I have us going for a couple flyers late with offensive tackle Jovan Klushtenstein from Oklahoma State, Timothy Okujoba, edge rusher from Missouri, and Mekhi Diggins from Metropolis. I figured it'd be nice to have a Metropolis player in there as well. So that's going to conclude this episode. The draft preview is now in the books. Let me know what you think we should do in the draft. Let me know who you think is going to go number 1 overall. Will it be Greg Waters-Key, or will the Rams shock the world and pick Nico Cabanera or somebody else? The draft episode will likely be uploaded on Sunday, so a couple days from now, I'm going to upload it as a premiere. I'll let you guys know the time for the premiere within the next day or so in the YouTube community page, so make sure to check over there for an update. But yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.